Here from Radio Row, our Super Bowl 47 coverage rolling along here at the New Orleans Convention Center. Darren McFarland here at 102.5 The Game Table. All this week brought to you by Low T Center in Brentwood, inside Maryland Farms, and Freeland Chevy Business Elite Sales. Really thrilled to have our next guest here at our table. You can see him on CBS Sports. Handles a ton of the college football. I guess college football today would be the right way to describe it. Spencer Tillman here at our table. Spencer, how you doing?
Darren, I don't mean to brag, but I'm doing pretty good. How you holding up?
Hey, that's the way it should be. I like it. So how is this week going for you?
It's been great. You know, it's just a reunion. You know, it's
right.
As important. This is our Super Bowl right now. I mean, this is as important to the media types as the game is for the players, and the players kind of have a different approach. They're not really trying to get warm and fuzzy with the opposition, but we get a chance to do that, and then come along and inform some people about good stuff like the Low T Centers and all that. It's great. It's fun.
How different is it than when you were a player with the 49ers, when you went through this?
Yeah. In terms of preparation, that part of it doesn't really change a whole lot in terms of the mindset. There were times when it was 2 weeks out, now it's a week out, or whatever the context is, the focus is the same. It's really about normalizing everything you've been taught, where it's repetition and rote, and then keeping the organizational structure in such a way where there are no distractions, or as few as possible as can be leading up to the game, so that everything is normal to the degree it can be normal. And then you go out and execute. So that part of it doesn't change. These two coaches are kind of control freaks. One of them does a better job of projecting something opposite of that. Jim is the one that doesn't do the great job of that. He is who he is, and I think he's been very successful, and no one can argue with his approach.
What did you think of Randy Moss on Media Day in a 49ers jersey, proclaiming to everybody that
greatest
let
ever?
me see. I'm the greatest receiver to ever do it. That's his quote in a 49ers uniform.
Well, having played with Jerry Rice, I would be hard-pressed to say that there was anybody who prepared and performed better than that guy. Number 80 was simply, in my opinion, the best in the business. He was the benchmark, the standard that everyone should aspire to be in terms of preparation, ultimately what produced on the football field in terms of results. His numbers bear that out as well. And even though the game has changed and become purely more so a spread quarterback type oriented deal where the receiver's numbers should reflect even greater success, he had that success in an area where we had two backs. And Roger Craig and Tom Rathman was going to get the ball at least 25, 30 times a game. And so he did it in an era when it was truly a dual kind of scheme. And he's the best ever.
I've always wondered, Spencer, you came from the big school. You came from the big football factory in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
We had Steve McNair in Nashville that came from Little Alcorn State, and Jerry Rice, the little school in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any advantage to playing, is there any advantage to an SEC player right now moving on to the next level to the guy that plays Division II?
Well, that's a great question, and here's why it's important to know why the potential for both scenarios to produce great players. It depends on the character of the player himself. Jerry Rice will tell you to this day that he was scared of being cut. I mean, that fear drove him. Sometimes if you're wired the right way, if you're McNair, you by virtue of being a quarterback, you have to have a measure of confidence coming in, okay? So you have a little bit of chip on your shoulder. You combine that with the fact you're from a smaller school, but you've had a program that allowed you to have the skill set, exploit it, and practice, spreading them out long before you got to the professional ranks. There's a measure of confidence that comes from that. Nick Saban is fond of saying the greatest ability is dependability. So if you've had a mark and a consistent path and history of being consistent and predictable and productive, confidence is the byproduct of that. And those players that you mentioned had that. Now, Jerry's was a little bit different because it seems like the farther away you get away from that quarterback position, the one that touches the ball every single down, the less the sense of confidence tends to be, because there's so much you have to move around before that ball gets to your hand. It has to get from the center to the quarterback. The protection has to be there in place. So if a receiver, there's a lot of angst and consternation that happens before the ball actually gets in your hand. Alternately, a running back, it goes from one guy, boom, you're there, it's in your hand. So you tend to be a little bit more confident about what you do. But Jerry was just the opposite.
You're a Houston guy. You actually played for the Oilers. Any teammates stick out to you when you were with the Oilers?
Yeah, one of them, Brad Hopkins, kind of sticks out to me. Number 72. He was a big guy and kind of funny.
Was he quiet, or was he? Did he like to tell stories and talk a lot?
He always told stories and talked a lot, And you used to take what you heard and divide it by two, and then you were halfway close to the truth, But he kind of reminded me of like the Giants who were in the Bay Area when I played with San Francisco on the baseball side. You know, I think it was Harry Carey said, you know, the Giants won't ever win the pennant because they're too busy drinking Chardonnay and eating prawns. Hell, they're only shrimp, and everybody knows it. You know, and that's kind of the way Brad was. He was just kind of like telling stories. You didn't know if you could believe half the stuff, but I did believe those two Rottweilers that he used to have. Don't know if it's still around. But, man, one of them about bit my leg off when I tried to shake his hand one day. Yeah.
So that was his security.
That was it. And that's some insight there because he had to have, despite his hulking frame, now I understand he's lost some weight.
He's lost a lot.
But he had those dogs guarding him during those times, and he may be not as confident as most people thought he was. That explains a lot.
See, he lost when he was 3+. I won't go any further than that, Spencer. He had Rottweilers.
You can call him biscuits because he was 3 biscuits away from like 342. I mean,
Spencer Tillman said that.
Yeah, okay.
Now he's moved down, and I think he's moved down a little bit in pit bull. They're a little bit smaller than the Rottweilers, but he has the pit bulls.
Nevertheless, they have that reputation, though.
Yes, still guarding Brad Hopkins.
Is he concerned about the image and the impression of pit bulls guarding him and all that stuff? I mean, that's just okay. I mean, I love dogs.
Do you think he's a guy that worries about his image or reputation?
You know what? I think you're right. I think he's not longing on confidence right now. And that may have started earlier because, he had pretty fleet of foot. Right. He could actually play basketball.
Yes.
And slam dunk at one particular point in time. Now, he's also a confident guy, and he'll be the first to tell you he doesn't lack for confidence. So he's changed.
How do you think the Chip Kelly experiment will work at the next level?
If he has a quarterback that can run his scheme, I think it's going to work extremely well.
But, Spencer, we've seen guys, Steve Spurrier came in the league with same accolades. Yeah. Offensive genius. He's a wizard. Look at his teams. Failure. Gigantic failure. Nick Saban. I mean, guys that have been very successful at the collegiate level bombed out at the next level.
Here's what the difference, though. Steve Spurrier came in with a spread attack, a wide-open attack. This is a run-based scheme that has spread elements to it. It neutralizes what historically has been a strength for most of these teams. Just look at the film of that Green Bay Packer game. Matthews on the edge didn't know what to do with the read option at the point of execution, at the mesh point.
They looked lost.
Speed was an asset of his. Intelligence, it was absolutely neutralized at the mesh point because now you take that asset and you neutralize and you say, you're not going to be able to just use that speed to get to the collision point and crush our fullback. I'll take it out of the pocket. And guess what? If you're not in your place, I've got 4.4 speed, says Kaepernick, to outrun you. And if you try to bring that safety down to contend with me, and then you bring that corner inside to kind of be a threat to stop me from running it, I can run a fade route on you, and I've got the accuracy to make every requisite throw in the book, and I've got the accuracy to hit you over the top. So now you've got a triple threat, and in the strictest sense of the definition, in a Colin Kaepernick that didn't exist in anybody else who has historically run this attack. And Chris Ault, when he put this together in Nevada almost 25 years ago, had something on his hands, so much so to the point where now the college game is dictating what's happening at the professional level, at least in about maybe 8 to 10 teams. They've got to account for it, particularly if you're in that division where you've got to defend them week in and week out. So this is a seminal moment in the history of the league where now, for the first time, the college game is driving the success of what's happening at the pro level.
Here's what concerns me, though. If you don't have the backup, Spencer.
Oh, great point.
Then what do you do?
Great point.
Because the read option and the pistol and these things we're seeing, if you've got RG3 and Kaepernick and these guys, Russell Wilson, what he did in Seattle this year, and maybe it's going to be Geno Smith. Maybe he's the next guy, and maybe in Philadelphia. What do you do when the starter goes down? Because the backup can't do the same thing. You can't change your offense in the middle of the season.
Well, you may not be able to change your offense in the middle of the season, but remember, this is an evolution. Who says that your backup can't do the same thing or can't be drafted to do the same thing? If they get out of the mode of drafting a classic or traditional drop-back quarterback, that could be, again, an extension of how much of an impact this system, this style, and Colin could have, where our backup has been drafted with this profile in mind. Who's to say that can't happen? You can still pass out of it. We're just expecting more from that position. So I envision a day where if Colin Kaepernick has the kind of success that he's able to have, he could literally change what you just talked about, who that second quarterback is going to be, who we target, who we draft, who that skill set is going to benefit most in terms of complementary positions. And it took a while for San Francisco's running back to really appreciate what it can do. But it can be a boon for a running back as much as it is for anybody else on the field.
Did you ever play with a guy who had a fake girlfriend?
You know what? I never did. And at least I never saw her. And I wasn't aware of that. But that was a tough spot for Manti.
So what do you do? The Titans have the 10th pick, and, all the projections before this crazy story was right around, 6 to 10 range. How do you handle this now if you're an NFL team?
Well, I played with most of those guys on that Titan team. Mike Munchak and Bruce and all those guys that are still there now. And I think even Brown is back there now on the defensive side of things, former Kentucky coordinator.
Steve Brown.
Yes. So got a lot of guys that I know a little bit how they think and what they're about. I can tell you this, that Manti Te'o's stock went down a whole lot in that championship game. He was exposed. And the closest threat to what he would face at a pro-caliber style offensive line, Barrett Jones and those guys at Alabama mowed him. And they beat him pretty good. He missed more tackles in that one game than he did in his entire career. I mean, probably about 7 or 8 that I saw, and it was all personnel related. In other words, not being able to take on blocks and get off of those blocks. Unless he can do something to mitigate that, and I don't see how he's going to get on the field in an active live situation to do that, I don't know how you change that impression, because if you look at who they played this year, that was the closest thing to what they would see of resembling a National Football League team.
You were nice enough to sign our low T helmets here at our table. I know they're near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, they are. And again, it's really because, look, my numbers worked out well. I'm in between that 350 and 1,000 range, so I'm in a good spot. But just the mere fact that I needed to know what they were was important, because I tell the story all the time, and this takes you back to the Houston/Tennessee connection again. We had a guy named Doug Dawson. Doug Dawson was an offensive lineman, kept bugging Kevin Gilbride, who's now the coordinator at the New York Giants, won a Super Bowl and all that stuff, to get tested for something. Okay, he was selling insurance. This is what the guy did in the offseason. Kevin Gilbride just did it to get him off his back. Found out that he had cancer, all right? Got treated, successfully beat it, gone on to win Super Bowls. Great success story. Now, low T isn't going to kill you necessarily, but it can help you understand of what your performance levels are and why you're not living the type of life that you probably could live if, in fact, you, first of all, diagnosed it. 10 minutes is all it takes. Find out what that number is. If you're out of that sweet spot, you can get it taken care of relatively simply. And it's not a stigma attached to it. It's the quality of life issue. I played with the Wounded Warriors yesterday in a football game. Lasted almost 2 hours. I'm bouncing around here today because I'm in good shape. I'm excited about life and all that stuff. If that's kind of gone from you, you might want to check your low T levels, your levels, in testosterone levels, because it could have a direct connection in a relationship. So that's all, just being aware more than anything else.
He can do it all. I mean, he plays football with Wounded Warriors, talks football, played the game, low T center. He's got a great message. He can do Harry Carey impressions.
Hey.
Spencer Tillman, CBS Sports. Thanks for stopping by.
You bet, my man. Take care.
All right.
All right.
We'll take a break here on 102.5 The Game.